Hey guys, it's Spencer again with Nexus. I have Steven here with me as well. We're bringing you guys another presentation today. Obviously, today's is on e-cigarettes and vape pens. This comes from the Stanford Tobacco Toolkit. So we're talking about some of the different chemicals and ingredients that are in the e-cigarettes. So we're talking about how they can affect the youth, both their brain and their body. And we'll be talking about how the industry kind of targets young people for their next customers as well. One important note I want to say is that Nexus Youth and Family Services does not condone the unlawful use of any alcohol or tobacco products. We do hope that you can get some kind of helpful and useful information out of this slideshow.
Guys, it's Steven, and we're going to talk a little bit about the early products. As you can see on this slide, the top two products are probably one of the earliest ones, the Enjoy and the E-Lights, and they came into the market about 2007, so they're only about 13 years old, and we don't have a lot of research done because 13 years is really not that big of a time to have really quality research done when it comes to the effects that these things have on people. But you did see like the Enjoy and the E-Lights, they were some of the first ones, and then after that, they went to the rechargeable ones, which you can see below that, which are the blue and the intro kit, the rechargeable intro kit. I had to look down at the screen for a second. And so all of these things, what they intended to do was to give you a high dose of nicotine quickly without the actual cigarette smoke or maybe the smell of the cigarette. You would be able to do this in a little bit more the convenience of your home or places where cigarettes weren't allowed. You were able to use these early products. And so, like I said, we don't have a ton of research done on these yet. They're still compiling all sorts of information and research. And we're actually on the next slide, you're going to see some of the newest products and what they are looking like.
So Steven just got finished talking about the first generation of e-cigarettes that hit the market here in the United States. I want to talk about the next generation, which was very popular, which was the JUUL. JUUL hit the market in about 2015 and quickly became kind of the e-cigarette of choice amongst teenagers especially. JUUL is a pod-based system where the pod contains the e-cigarette liquid and it goes into a battery, which is as you see on the screen there, the long portion of it. JUULs are very small, which unfortunately makes them easy to hide, which is why they were useful amongst teens. But as time went on, the pod-based system kind of gave way to what they have now, which is a more disposable system, which are called puff bars, wave bars, things like that, which are really popular on the market right now. They originally became popular because in the United States, they made it illegal to sell the flavored pods. But so far, these other companies have found a loophole so they can sell the flavorings in a disposable device.
What's in that JUULpod? Obviously, there's nicotine. That is the component of the JUUL that is causing the addiction. And so the nicotine actually works in conjunction with the benzoic acid to deliver the nicotine to the brain to fuel the addiction. Then you see the glycerol and the propylene glycol. These are common components that are found in most e-cigarette and vape pens. And propylene glycol has actually never been approved by the federal government for inhalation. So we're putting things into our body that we do not know what the long-term or even really short-term use can be by overuse of these things. Then we see the natural oils, extracts, and flavors, and there's some unknowns. And the reason that those are on there is they all add to different flavors or they have different roles in this e-cigarette or vape juice. The problem with that is because of the regulation, we could be putting a lot more harmful things into our system than we actually think we are. And JUUL has mentioned that one JUULpod is equivalent to 1 pack of cigarettes worth of nicotine. That's a lot of nicotine. Also, JUUL kind of flooded the market. Right now, it's estimated that they have 30% of the overall e-cigarette market. And they're producing 20 million devices in pods every single month. So this is just some of what's going on with the JUULpod. There's much more, and we would hope that you would begin to think about what you're putting into your body and how it would affect you.
So here we have some examples of some of the flavors that are out there for e-cigarette juices. Now there are well over 700 different flavors available on the market, so this isn't a comprehensive list by any means, but this is just some examples. On the left there you have the one that looks like it's Bubblicious bubblegum. In the middle you have one that looks like Fruity Pebbles cereal, and on the right you have the one that looks like Red Bull. All of these different products are marketed towards young people, and getting them intrigued into starting or trying e-cigarettes for the very first time. Now in the middle there, we have a list of some of the ingredients that are in the e-cigarette liquids. First one being nicotine. Obviously we know nicotine is the addictive substance that's in both tobacco products and e-cigarettes alike. Then you have propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, and something called flavoring chemicals. Now that to me is just a little bit vague. I wouldn't want to put anything into my body that just said flavoring chemicals. I want to know what the chemicals are, what the possible side effects of ingestion or inhaling them would be, and what they could do to my body over time.
All right, you guys. So one thing that Spencer and I hear pretty frequently throughout this presentation is that the e-cigarettes, vape pens, and the JUULpods produce a water vapor. That's the furthest thing from the truth. So what you have when you have these e-juices or the pods is you have chemicals that are inside of it, and they're sometimes potentially bad by themselves. Then you heat them up and they create new chemicals that some are potentially dangerous, even more dangerous, potentially cancer causing. And it's really not just water vapor. It's a whole bunch of stuff that can greatly affect you and affect your body and those around you. So it's really important that we understand that it's not water vapor. It's more of like a Febreze can. If you take the Febreze and you spray it, you can actually watch the particles fall down. And that's exactly what's happening from these e-cigarettes and vape pens. This stuff is sticking to your skin, it's sticking to your clothes, it's sticking to your furniture, it's sticking all over. And it's really important, you guys, that we make sure that we understand this simple fact, that this stuff is not healthy for you, and we do not know the potential outcomes of how bad these are for you because it's only been around for a couple of years. So it's really important that we understand it is not just water vapor.
Okay, so as we know, a cigarette can contain 7,000 chemicals in each one. Obviously, this list isn't comprehensive and doesn't include every chemical. Listing all 7,000 would take up a lot of space, but these are the ones that Stanford thought were really important and that may surprise you that they're actually in cigarettes. So we'll talk about just a couple of them here. First one we'll talk about is toluene. Toluene is actually an ingredient found in bleach. Next on the list is formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is an ingredient in embalming fluid that's used to preserve dead bodies. Then we have acetone. Acetone is found in a lot of different nail polish removers and even like industrial paint thinners. And then on there we have arsenic. Arsenic is the main ingredient in rat poison. So these are some of the chemicals that are found in cigarettes that we know of all of these for sure found in cigarettes, and we know most of those are harmful to the body. Now on the next slide we're going to talk about which one of these chemicals or which of these chemicals are found in e-cigarettes.
So when these e-cigarettes and vape pens came out, we were really uncertain of what was being found in the aerosol. And so we've done studies and we found out that all the chemicals that were in the regular cigarettes is actually in the e-cigarettes and vape pens as well. With that being said, it's extremely important that we understand that one thing a lot of kids consistently tell us is the fact that, hey, my parents or so-and-so has told me that this is safer than smoking cigarettes. When in fact, we can actually see that that's not the case. It has a lot of the same cancer-causing ingredients or chemicals in them as in the e-cigarettes as they do the cigarettes. And it's really important too that we understand that some of these things in and of themselves is not necessarily bad. Like, for example, zinc or calcium or iron, those things aren't bad in and of themselves. They are chemicals found in this, but things like Spencer mentioned in the slide before, like formaldehyde, acetone, propylene glycol, lead, or lithium, or silicone, that stuff is really, doesn't sound like it's a very good idea for us to put that into our bodies. So it's really important that we understand that yes, they contain some of the same chemicals in them, but it's also important that we understand that some of these ingredients can cause cancer. So we don't know exactly what that might look like in the future because we don't have as much research or as much time as we have had with cigarettes. But we do know that some of these ingredients are the same, these chemicals and the ingredients are the same, which could cause new cancers, new things. We're not exactly sure, but we do know that it is potentially harmful to our bodies. So we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to limit the intake of these things.
Okay, here I want to talk about the varying amounts of nicotine that are found in the different e-cigarette juices. One thing that Stephen and I hear a lot is that, oh, well, if I get the 0 milligram nicotine e-juice, then I won't be addicted to it, right? And that would be true if it was true that there was zero nicotine in that. However, there was a study done a few years ago in Contra Costa County where they went around to every vape shop in the county and bought all the e-juices that they could find that said it had 0 milligrams of nicotine in it. Then they took it back to a lab and they tested them all. What they found was about 85% tested to have at least traces of nicotine in it. Now, even just a trace of nicotine can keep somebody addicted to it. So we have to be really careful about what these packages are saying. Because they're not regulated by the FDA right now, they don't have to really tell the truth. So they can kind of say whatever they want. They can tell you there's 0 nicotine, even if there is nicotine. And even trace amounts of nicotine can keep somebody addicted to that product.
What we're going to do is we're going to talk briefly about frequency of use. And when we talk about this, we're talking about 11 to 17-year-olds across the country, okay? So the statistics that we're going to show you from a couple of years are going to be for 11 to 17 from across the United States, not specifically California. And so here's what we have. In 2013, that number was 4.5%. 4.5% of 11 to 17-year-olds across the country used e-cigarettes or vape pens. 2014, that number increases to 13.4%. In 2015, it increases to 16%. And here's what's kind of cool. In 2016, that number actually drops to 11.2%. But what we've seen and what we've realized is that after 2016, JUUL and some of the other ones started marketing really, really strongly towards people aged 11 to 17. And so what we've seen is that in 2019, vaping amongst teenagers increased to 27.5% across the board. So you see this drastic increase from 4.5% to 27.5% in 6 years. That is a huge number, and we are pretty certain that the number of people in Amador County 11 to 17 that have used or are using e-cigarettes and vape pens is actually slightly higher than the national average.
Let's talk about some of the health risks that are associated with e-cigarette and vape pen usage. First off, we know about the lungs. So when the aerosol enters the lungs, it leaves residue behind, which can be bad for the person. We know about something called popcorn lung. There's also been a new term coined called EVALI, which stands for e-cigarette or vape associated lung illness. This kind of encompasses anything that can happen with the lungs due to e-cigarettes or vape usage. Also, we know that there can be issues with the heart. Nicotine is known to cause cardiovascular issues. The ears, nose, and throat irritation is also very common amongst e-cigarette and vape pen users, whether they're adult or young people. And then we have the big risk of young people becoming addicted to the nicotine. We talked a little bit before about how the developing young brain is more susceptible to becoming addicted to different substances, and nicotine is included in those.
The long-term health effects, what are they and how do we know? Well, it's really important that we kind of look at it from the perspective of cigarette smoke and cigarette tobacco. And the reason being is there was over 25 years worth of long-term health studies to see what that might do to a person's body over a long period of time. Right now, we're kind of in the midst of that with the e-cigarettes. Like we said earlier in the presentation, that the e-cigarettes really came to the market in about 2007. So about 13 years worth of studies being able to be done and had right now. So it's really kind of unknown still, but we're working on that. People are working on that to get as much information as quickly as possible. There is a humongous risk when it comes to cardiovascular and heart health. It's a major concern for long-term use, especially not just for cigarettes, but e-cigarettes and vaping as well. Also, the use of nicotine being addictive and how potentially that could contribute to long-term use and addictions to other things as well. There's also the revealing health risks associated with the EVALI. With the EVALI, if that's happening so quickly and it's developing so rapidly, we're not exactly sure how that could affect things long-term. But we have seen a short amount of time, it's impacted our lungs and our bodies greatly. And so we can only imagine what it would do over a long period of time. And we encourage you to not be the guinea pigs for this and make sure that you're doing things that are healthy with your bodies.
In an earlier slide, we talked about some of the ingredients that are included in the e-cigarette juices. One of those was propylene glycol. This has been improved by the government for ingestion, which would be eating it, but has not been improved for inhaling it. So the difference between ingestion and inhalation is this. When something is ingested or eaten, it goes to your digestive tract, which helps to break that food down so that it can be processed correctly. And the things that are good in it can be dispersed throughout your body, and everything else is secreted out. Well, now the respiratory system or your lungs doesn't have that digestive tract in it. So when you inhale something, it doesn't get broken down the way it should be. So we're not sure of the damage exactly that can be done by inhaling something like propylene glycol, whereas when you ingest it, it can be broken down by your digestive tract.
All right, thirdhand smoke. Thirdhand smoke is different than what we commonly talk about, which is secondhand smoke when it comes to tobacco smoke. And so it's really important that we understand when it comes to this thirdhand smoke with the e-cigarettes and vape is that those things, as we talked about earlier, where if you use the Febreze can, it would come down and settle. It's really important that we understand that just because it's settled doesn't mean it's not there anymore. If you sprayed that Febreze can and put your arm out, you would feel it settle on your skin. It could potentially cause an irritation. So when an e-cigarette or vape is used in a home or around things, it ends up sticking to that surface for a while. So it's really important that you understand that, like, your furniture, your animals, your carpet, your clothing, your skin, all of those things are susceptible for it to just stick to, and they could cause issues because of the toxins that are in it. We have seen an increase in emergency room visits for kids under 5 who thought it was a juice or saw it laying around and they drank it. So we've seen an increase of that. So it's extremely dangerous. Also for the little brothers and sisters, the skin irritation because of their skin being so sensitive. So it's really important that just because it's not there, you can't see it visibly, doesn't mean it's not there. So we really need to make sure that you understand that thirdhand smoke is different than secondhand smoke, but it is also impacting those around you pretty greatly.
Hey, you can't vape on the bus, man.
Seconds after this Fresno, California bus passenger places his e-cigarette in his pocket, it explodes, severely burning him. The battery was likely the cause.
They have a wrap on the outside that needs to stay intact. If that battery gets torn and that starts to touch metal or something like loose change in your pocket or something like that, it can definitely short out the battery.
Explosions like these have caused serious injuries before. Surveillance cameras captured the terrifying moment in November when an e-cigarette exploded inside a New York City man's pocket, causing third-degree burns. And earlier this month, a 24-year-old was severely burned when a pair of e-cigarette batteries exploded in his pocket. Attorney Sanford Rubenstein represents both men.
It explodes multiple times over and over like fireworks. There should be a ban on the possession of e-cigarettes and e-cigarette batteries until such time as the manufacturers determine what's causing them to explode.
Between 2009 and January 2016, there were 134 incidents of overheating, fire, or explosion involving e-cigarettes in the United States. More than 50 people were injured. Just days before the latest incident, incoming Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called for more federal oversight.
It's time to take a hard look at requiring a recall of certain brands if they are much more likely to explode than others.
The concern is, as e-cigarettes become even more popular, the number of people injured will grow too.
So that last video demonstrates another danger that's associated with using e-cigarettes or vape pens. The batteries in these things can be very volatile, especially when they become damaged, as shown in the video. You see the one young man on the bus there had it explode in his pocket. The video also talked about another young man who was leaving the store and exploded in his pocket, causing second and third degree burns on his legs. This can happen for a multitude of different reasons. One being overusage. So the batteries get used so often that they begin to overheat and can start to become damaged, which can lead to them becoming volatile and exploding if touched by any other metals. Other things could be faulty batteries, things like they weren't made right in the factories or whatever the case may be. But the e-cigarettes exploding is another very, very dangerous thing that can be associated with e-cigarettes. There was a story about a young man, I think in Florida at the end of 2018. His e-cigarette exploded very close to his face when he was using it. It actually severed the carotid artery in his neck, and he eventually ended up passing away due to a stroke. So these can be extremely dangerous, not only because of the health effects they have, but because they become extremely volatile when the batteries become damaged.
So the usual suspects, we know there are some major players when it comes to the tobacco cigarette companies. You have Newport, Marlboro, and Camel. They are some very large companies. And what they've done is they have attempted to go after the new generation. They're trying to replace the old smokers with the younger people. And the way they're trying to attract the younger people is through these e-cigarettes. And they've done a very good job when it comes to marketing towards younger people. And so all they're doing is replacing the old with the new and the new technology. And so Newport has created the blue, Marlboro has created the Mark 10, and Camel the Views Solo. So it's really important, you guys, that we understand that they are not interested in the well-being of any of the people, whether old or young. All they are really interested in is making money. And so they're doing so by making sure they have the next generation of users.
Stephen just talked about how the e-cigarette companies, tobacco companies are looking to replace their old smokers. So who's going to do that? They're looking at you young people in order to replace their old smokers, the people who pass on from some kind of smoking or e-cigarette related illness or what have you. So tobacco companies have done this for a very long time. They know that marketing towards young people gets them potential lifelong customers. It's known that if you start smoking before the age of 18, you have an 80 to 90% chance of becoming a lifelong smoker. And they're aware of this. These same companies that own some of these e-cigarette companies are the same big tobacco companies. So they understand that their addictive substance, which is the nicotine that's included in both tobacco and e-cigarette products, can get them lifelong customers. So they're looking to replace their old customers with a younger generation like yourselves.
So as Spencer said, what the tobacco companies are trying to do is to market towards you. They're going to continue to try and reach people the best way possible. And their marketing strategies are, quite frankly, they're pretty ingenious. They've been doing the same thing, though, for years and years. So I think people are starting to catch on. One thing that they'll do is they'll do something like these pictures on this slide. You'll see it's kind of a trendy picture. She's obviously using an e-cigarette. The popularity of the smoke or the cloud of smoke, the colors in the picture, all this stuff is intentional. It's also important to note that a lot of the times these e-cigarette companies and vape manufacturers, what they'll do is they will actually go to social media influencers and just have them have a JUUL, or they'll have some e-cigarette in a picture, and they won't even say anything about it. All they'll do is actually just show it in a picture, and people will see it. It doesn't cost them much, and it's not them technically marketing as much as product placement. For example, if you've watched the NBA or if you've watched NASCAR, anything like that, sometimes what they'll do is in the NBA, they'll have Gatorade. Gatorade's always there. They never drink it, but it's always right in front. You always see it, and sometimes you think you want to have some of that Gatorade or you want to get a Gatorade. Same thing with the marketing techniques that they're doing to reach you, whether it's through colors and designs, social media, the different influencers, different athletes, different whoever it might be. They're trying to find those people to influence you to use their product. Again, at the bottom, the very bottom of this, all it is about the money. It's about who can continue to give them money as the older people stop using or pass away, and the new people begin at the next generation of smoking e-cigarettes and vape.
So here we see some of the different flavors that are out there on the market right now. Again, one of the ones we always get a laugh at is the chicken and waffles. I'm not really a big fan of that anyway. I'm not sure why somebody would want to try that, even in a vape or e-cigarette juice, but some people are interested in it. But this just kind of goes to show you how they're trying to hit a diverse variety of people. So they kind of put out different flavors. That's why there's like 700 different flavors out there. They want to appeal to everybody, and they do that by putting out a wide variety of flavors, especially flavors they know are going to appeal to young people. So one of the things that people who are proponents for e-cigarettes will always say is that it's an alternative for somebody to help them quit smoking cigarettes. Now, I can tell you that somebody who smokes regular cigarettes and is trying to quit and they're thinking of moving to an e-cigarette, they're probably not going to use a key lime cookie flavored e-cigarette or an apple flavored e-cigarette. They're going to want something that reminds them of a regular cigarette so that they can kind of wean themselves off of that. So these flavorings and things like that are marketed towards young people to remind them of flavors they had when they were a kid and to get them intrigued about trying it for the first time.
So as Spencer mentioned, there is an incredible amount of flavors, and they do that for a reason, to appeal to the masses. And so it's not just the flavors, but also the e-cigarettes themselves or the vape pens. What they use is they allow you to do this customization and create your own. So whether it's this pink floral design or Hello Kitty or Batman, Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, or your favorite football team, or maybe it's a stormtrooper, whatever it is, they want to allow you to express yourself using their device. And the problem is, and we want you to understand this, is these companies, the bottom line is these companies do not care about you at all. All they care about is the money. So if you're investing into their company, they're making money. They do not care about your health, short-term or long-term. They just care about money.
Another important thing to remember, guys, is the difference between salt-based nicotine and free-based nicotine. The free-based nicotines were the ones that were used in the kind of the older versions of the e-cigarettes and vape pens that Stephen talked about earlier in the presentation. And those can contain anywhere from 0 to 36 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter. Now, the newer salt-based nicotine is a little bit stronger. It's what's included in like the puff bars, the JUULs obviously on there, and the different disposable ones like puff bars and things like that. Those can contain up to 59 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter. So it's a little bit stronger. Also important to remember that each JUULpod or each puff bar or any other disposable device like it contains about the same amount of nicotine as one pack of cigarettes.
Guys, that sums up our presentation. A few things real quick. One, we want you to remember that using e-cigarettes, vape, JUULpods, puff bars, whatever they are, if you're under the age of 21, it's absolutely illegal. So that's the first reason you shouldn't do it. The second reason is it's definitely not safe. It's not healthy. It's not a healthier alternative to smoking cigarettes or anything like that. And thirdly, we want you to know that it's really important when it comes to either tobacco and vaping or whatever it might be, that you do your due diligence when it comes to research. The reason we do these presentations is we want to give you as much information as possible, good quality information to help you make good, healthy choices with your life. So we've tried to do that today. We've tried to do this in a condensed version compared to what we would do in a class normally. We didn't have time for questions and going back and forth and having that dialogue. But we really hope that you kind of understand the essence of what this is about, that it's not safe, it's not healthy, and that we would encourage you to stay away from these things through the development of you as a young person, and wait until if you are going to do these sort of things, that you would do them when it is legal for you to do so first and foremost, and after you've done research to make sure you truly understand what you're doing and putting into your body. So we hope you guys have learned something. We hope you take something from this, and we hope that it would help you make healthy and happy decisions when it comes to how you're running your life.